global economy has suffered in the COVID-19 pandemic. With many countries easing lockdown restrictions, many were optimistic that things could get only better. However, a report by SNG Grant Thornton warns that tough times still lie ahead for the country. For more on this, I'm joined by Oupa Mbokodo, who's the head of advisory services at SNG Grant Thornton. Now, Oupa, welcome to News 3 PM. According to Grant Thornton, the country still is facing difficult times. Now, your report shows a current upward trend for growth for mid-market businesses. However, the prediction tells differently. Why is that so?
Thanks, Katlego. So basically, we do a global study as part of Grant Thornton International. This is done in about 29 markets or 29 countries. We cover about 10,000 businesses, and in South Africa we cover 100 businesses. So what we've seen, you'll recall that in our previous report for this first half of 2021, we saw some positive trajectory. So we saw some growth and optimism was high. What we've then seen, however, which is different from what we see on a global landscape, was a scenario where from a South African perspective, the index showed a decline for the South African market, and that is informed by a number of elements of the index. Obviously, as part of the index, we look at optimism, we look at economic growth. We also look at constraints that small businesses and mid-market businesses may be constrained with. So it's a combination of those number of elements that has shown or provided results that show some challenges ahead of mid-tier or mid-market businesses going forward.
So from that research and then finding that these elements are impacting businesses in this way, what advice would you have for mid-market businesses in order for them to be able to come out at the end of the tunnel with some growth in their businesses?
So what we've seen is that mid-tier businesses continue to manage their cash flow very closely. They're looking at other ways in terms of engaging with their clients and also a mix in terms of their product and service that they take to the market. They also look at ways in which prices can be adjusted. At a global level, we see an increase in prices as part of this study of about 5 points, while in South Africa, the respondents indicated that from a price increase perspective, we're looking at an increase of about 2 points. So I think it's a combination of those elements. What we've seen is that businesses have adjusted locally to match what the market is looking like and what the market is looking for. And a lot of those businesses have embraced technology to ensure continuity in terms of business and also to ensure that their labor continuously produce what they need to produce or service their clients that they need to service. In going forward, though, there is an increase in terms of making sure that they invest going forward in technology and other elements, even though we saw a dip in terms of the outlook for investment, but that may be informed by huge investments that were made in 2020, in particular in technology, just to ensure that virtual working or remote working can continue. So in the second half of the 2021 period, we saw a dip in investment, but that is informed by investment that was made already in the 2020 financial year and the first half of 2021.
Now, Mr. Mbokodo, you mentioned earlier that the survey is based on 29 economies across the globe. How do South African businesses, the 100 that you did do a survey on, compare in comparison to the rest of the businesses that you surveyed in the continent of Africa?
So obviously challenged, Katlego, and that is also linked to what we saw in terms of the lockdowns and the restrictions in the South African market, and optimism in general was quite low for those businesses. This was at the back of an increase in optimism for the first half of 2021. And I think that was based on a belief that, COVID is probably behind us and the restrictions will be lifted. But then reality kicked in the second half of 2021. And what we've seen is more of a negative trajectory or less optimism from mid-market businesses in South Africa compared to the global index, which showed some improvement in that space. If you look at the overall index globally, we saw a 1.2 points improvement, while from a South African perspective, we saw a decline of about minus 3.2. From an Africa perspective, it was also a decline. Just to put things into context, from a South Africa perspective, we don't cover the rest of Africa. We cover two specific markets, which is South Africa and Nigeria.
All right. So now with investment intentions dropping, how long can it take for mid-market businesses to recover?
So it's hard to tell. Obviously, there's quite a number of other events that have since happened. We saw, the Ukraine situation. We saw recently natural disasters in the KZN market. So it's quite difficult to tell. What is positive, though, is the fact that there is still some level of optimism. We see the market also even in South Africa opening up. A lot of businesses are going back into almost full capacity in terms of operations. So it's quite difficult to tell. We have started, though, working on H1 report for 2022. So looking forward to those results. But again, it's coming at the back of other events like the Ukraine conflict and other, situations in South Africa.
Of course, and I mean, a lot of industries will differ. Not all is lost, however, but with industries like entertainment and technology, how will they recover? Because it seems as though, especially for the entertainment industry, it will take a bit of a while for them to then come back and playing a role in that economic recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. But obviously, the lifting of the restrictions in South Africa by the president, I think is a welcome development. We've seen spectators now going back to sporting events, and the expectation is that the entertainment industry will slowly start to pick up. Obviously, quite a number of these small and mid-tier or mid-market businesses have already gone under, so it's going to take a while. Some of them are challenged from a cash flow perspective, and access to finance will be a determining factor in terms of recovery for quite a number of mid-market businesses going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mbokodo. Thank you for your time. That was Oupa Mbokodo, Head of Advisory Services at SNG Grant Thornton, giving us an outlook of what businesses, mid-market businesses in South Africa, are still to expect in the next coming year. It seems like it's still a bumpy ride. However, for the rest of the globe, it seems South Africa is lagging behind, but we will soon catch up. Now, the